Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good night, depending on what part of the country you're located at. This is Jasir Jamal from Texas 1031 Exchanges, located down south of the country, of course. So today I'm going to go ahead and address one little thing over here. So throughout my previous videos, you've definitely heard me say depending on which path you take, well, that basically talks about what rule you decide to go when you're doing a 1031 exchange. It's basically you only have like 3 rules you can go by, and we're going to talk about them right here today. So basically this is how it's going to work out. You just have your relinquished property, you just sold it, you just closed on it, and now you're like, well, Jasir, what rule applies to me and what rule should I take? Well, today I'm going to go ahead and break it down and we'll figure out what works best for you, or at least you're going to figure out what works best for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. So here are the 3 paths you can take, or 3 rules, whatever you want to call it. So we have the 3 property rule, and we have the 200% rule, and we have the 95% rule. So let's start with the 3 property rule, which is actually the most commonly used one. What can you do over here? So of course, when you close, you have 45 days to identify a couple of replacement properties. Well, with this rule, you can only identify 3 replacement properties. And here's the thing. All of them, or each and every one of them, can be whatever value you so desire. Value doesn't matter over here. So like, you could identify the first property and it could be valued at like, all right, first let's start with this. So you just sold your relinquished property for, I don't know, I guess 5 million. That's fairly reasonable. But then you go ahead and you can identify the first replacement property for like $10 million. The second one can be about 20 million. And the third one can be about $70 million. It does not matter. The value over here does not matter, as it can be 3 properties valued at whatever. But of course, as long as their values are higher or equal to $5 million, because at the end of the day, that's the whole purpose of doing the exchange, you know, buying something bigger. So yeah, so you can identify up to 3 properties valued at whatever you so desire. It's not a big deal. And then of course, when you go ahead and write those 3 properties down on that designation form and turn that over to me, after that, you of course have 135 days to close. I mean, you can close on all of them if you want, or 2 of them, but you have to close on at least 1 of these properties that you identify. And it can only be these. You can't change it after the 45-day period passes, unfortunately. So of course, that's the 3 property rule. And then now, I mean, the 3 property rule is what's used the most, but now let's come over here, which is the 200% rule. What happens over here? You can identify up to an unlimited amount of replacement properties. The number doesn't matter. It could be 2, it could be 20, it could be 30, 40, whichever one you so desire. So you can identify an unlimited amount, but here's the caveat though. Over here, value did not matter, but over here it does. You had the aggregate value, the total value of all replacement properties cannot be, the total value of all the replacement properties that you identified cannot be more than 200% of the value of your relinquished property. So like for example over here, as we discussed above, you sold your relinquished property for 5 million and now you want to go down the 200% rule. You can identify up to however many properties you want with this rule. It could be 10, 20, 30, however much you want. Now here's the caveat. All those properties that you identified, their aggregate value, meaning their total value, cannot be twice. It cannot be more than twice of what your relinquished property was valued at. In this case, relinquished was for 5 million. It cannot be more than $10 million. In this case, here we go. Not more than 10 million. Yep. So it cannot be more than $10 million. You can identify up to however many you want, but not more than twice or 200% more than the value of your relinquished property that you sold. And there you have it. And now let's talk about the last rule, but not the least one. It's the 95% rule. What happens over here? Hold on, let me just draw a line right here. Okay, good. What happens over here? You can identify unlimited amounts of properties. It does not matter. And here's the other part as well. You can also, their value over here does not matter. It can be however much value you want. You sold your relinquished property over here for 5 million. You can identify 20 properties up here for a total aggregate value of $60 million. No big deal. There's absolutely no problem. Could be 60, could be 100. But for the sake of this example, let's just say it's about 100. So let's figure that out. real quick. So $100 million. You identified 20 properties and their aggregate value is up to $100 million. So now, here's the thing. You can go ahead and you have to close on at least however many properties you can, but the properties that you do close out of these 20 properties, their values have to be 95%. You have to close on at least 95% worth of replacement properties that you identified. So let me put this in an example. Here's your $5 million relinquished property. You grab your proceeds, you're coming down here. So over here, you can buy all those properties valued at $100 million, or you can just make sure that you close on enough properties out of these 20 that are valued at $95 million in total, and your exchange will be successful. Just in case you couldn't close on all of them valued at $100 million, you just close on enough that will be valued at $95 million, meaning 95% of the value of your replacement properties, and you will be good to go. So that's it, folks. I mean, before I go ahead and wrap it up even more, I mean, this 3-property rule is the most common one used because, I mean, you're just buying 3 properties and their value can be whatever, so it's a little more convenient for folks. These 2 rules are not used that much. This 95% rule is very rare. It's usually used by those top savvy investors, but I mean, it's not used the most. You can identify however many you want. Just make sure you close on 95% of the value of those replacement properties and you'll be good to go. But aside from that, folks, that's it for me today. I really hope you got a lot of value out of this video. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. Until then, see you next time.